The fifth season of Xena had the same disease that a previous season on Hercules had, which is what happens to this show when nobody's there every single day loving it. And so unlike previous seasons of Xena, we only had the most insanely loose idea of what we wanted to do that season. All of it somewhat complicated by the fact that Xena, played by Lucy Lawless, had become pregnant to some fool. And although I'm very happy to have a wonderful son as a result of that, it really put a spanner in the works for running a TV show with a female action hero. So that season 5 became a constant struggle just to keep up with each episode without really a clear guide as to where we were going and what the episode should be, story it should be telling.
Lucy got what?
What? Who?
Lucy got
Someone
pregnant in the
told Rob?
5th season.
When we heard in the writer's room that Lucy was pregnant, everybody pretty much dropped their jaws and then thought, okay, how do we deal with this? We knew right away we were going to have to cut back on the action. And in an action show, that's a pretty scary thing to contemplate. What we did to accommodate it, at least from my point of view, when we had to scale back on the physical action, that meant we had to ratchet up the emotional angst that the character went through so that we created at least some action emotionally when we had to take it away from her physically.
We entertained for a little while the idea of trying to conceal Xena's pregnancy. But with an action star who does flips and all those kind of things, even no matter how much you double, you're really stuck to this, and then it's a double. And we thought about it, and many different people said, hey, shows always go up in the ratings when they introduce the baby. Whether it's Friends, whether it's this, that, or that's a standard television ploy. Introduce the baby when you're in your 5th or 6th season, when the ratings are starting to go down, and the ratings go up because everyone loves babies. But, and then for a little while when it was RJ, Steve, and myself, and we knew this was going to be a problem, RJ and I talked about, oh, we'll do Lone Wolf. We'll do Xena wandering around with this little baby, do Lone Wolf and Cub, doing all these cool things.
We had been told that Rob and Lucy were pregnant, and so we knew we needed to adjust for that, knowing not only that we can't put her into the kind of physical situations that we were normally used to, but then also we'd have to obviously recostume and we'd have to write for it.
Right.
Write her into the...
Unlike most TV pregnancies, you know, the notion of having a whole season where Xena is standing behind a bar or a piano or a podium, you know, you can do that on Cheers. It doesn't work so well on Xena.
Correct, correct. And we were lucky enough that Lucy actually looked really good pregnant, didn't gain a lot of weight in everywhere other than her midsection. So we were incredibly lucky that she, even though she was showing, she actually was radiating, radiating beauty.
Pregnancy worked out really well for us.
It did.
So that's what really counts.
It did.
Yeah.
But I think we also knew that we were obviously going to have to amp up Gabrielle to be able to take some episodes. Not that Renee couldn't do it in a heartbeat because she had done it many times before, but we knew that over the course of several episodes, we were going to have her carry the load.
Right.
And then I think we started to bring in Joxer more and Autolycus and things like that. So just like when Lucy broke her pelvis, sometimes you're thrown into, okay, how do we get through this? And you really have to just bolster up with supporting characters and come up with storylines. And sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't succeed. That just don't use your star.
Right,
So.
and using sort of a different muscle.
Mm-hmm. Xena! Mom! So, it's true? And when were you going to tell me? Amphipolis was my very next stop. We did look positively radiant. When are we going to meet your special someone? If you mean the father, the answer's never. He's not in my life. But Xena, every child needs a father. You raised me on your own. A test that would have been much easier with help.
Her mother was always trying to marry her off to, well, just about anybody in the end. And for some reason, Xena wasn't having it. And I kept rejecting the offers of her mother, the suitors that her mother put forward. So Xena remains a single girl, as ever. She's all right with that. Decided it might be fun if I squeezed into the Gabrielle dance doubles costume, who's
I love how
good
you
deal
always.
bigger.
I love the disclaimer.
Well, I always say I'm trying to prove. Yeah, it wasn't her outfit.
I know.
Because
You're 8
then
months
I was
pregnant.
8 months pregnant. There's no way I could get into your outfit. But I can hardly. I'm wearing your shirt now. I can barely fit into that.
I think you
anyway,
can fit into my clothes.
So I was wearing her stunt doubles costume and just came out with my big pregnant belly showing.
And I wasn't there. I can't believe I missed that.
I've never seen anything like this. Get up, thing! Get up! Get us outside!
The skeleton baby coming out of Xena's stomach. Yeah, my wife still actually looks at that with revulsion, having 2 kids. We knew that it was going to be a risky venture, but we also wanted to shock the audience and go, oh, this is going to be one of those episodes, isn't it? And we achieved it by a combination of prosthetics on set, and then also doing a digital skeleton baby that was done afterwards. I think Flat Earth did that. Coming out of the stomach. So it was a combination of both practical live action effects and then digital effects after the fact. We actually had Lucy laying on a situation where she dipped down, and then we built the rest of her body up on a rig. And that rig included the stomach section, which allowed us to then, have puppeteers below, sort of making those weird alien-like movements on her skin before it actually burst through. Yuck.
We would have never introduced a pregnant action star. If you think of Rambo or what's the guy's Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon or any of those, you don't want to see those guys or Clint Eastwood play it pregnant. So it's our level for who this character was. We always referred to the atypical, or to the typical male action stars and said, would they have done that? Would they have done that? Well, I don't know that you would have wanted them to be pregnant. But that said, I actually liked where it eventually got us to. It was a painful process, but there were episodes then with Eve at the end of that season and motherhood and going on into the following season that I really liked.
I think Xena's baby stayed around for as long as it took for us to establish that Xena's a good and caring mother. But then I think the baby began to get in the way. I know she presented a problem for me as a writer because you don't want to endanger the child. That makes Xena look bad. And yet, the child is there and we're doing an action show. So I think the decision to kind of put the child off to the side was a really good one in terms of the show. I don't know how much more we could have done action-wise without calling into big question the safety of the child.
Have you thought of a name?
Her name is Eve. You've already named her? Solon did when we were in Tartarus.
I think we did use about 10 different babies, and especially when we would do those close-ups.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at those close-ups real closely, although I probably shouldn't be saying this now that there's a DVD that you can.
Some of them are Maori children.
They are.
And, yeah.
They are. Yeah. I think my face is even in there a couple times, too.
We're gonna be together now, Eve. You and me and your brother forever and ever. You hear that, Solon? Forever.
Oh yeah, babies are so painful to shoot with. And the worst thing about working with babies really isn't the baby, it's the mother that comes with the baby.
Oh, yeah?
Because you've got to be constantly like stroking them. And rightly so, you know, they're protective and everything, but it's, anyway, it's triply effortful.
Wow, that's interesting, because you were a mother and you would have been wanting to nurture the mother, you know, and I...
You never pay attention to...
Well, I was more conscientious of the baby being on set. It's interesting, I didn't think about the mother because I couldn't connect with her in that way.
Right.
Once we decided to play the pregnancy of Xena through the series, the question of who the heck the father was became burning in everyone's mind. And we addressed it very briefly in Animal Attraction with Gabrielle asking, was it Hercules? And Xena didn't know. And I may be wrong, but I actually think we went back and reshot for like a half a day the Callisto and Michael moment that infers how that pregnancy came about. So at the end of Fallen Angel. So we knew that, well, Xena was certainly pregnant in Fallen Angel. So we knew that we had to tip our hand. So if you go back and watch it, you can see that virgin birth, so to speak, was inseminated at the end of that episode.
Come on, push! Come on, Xena, push!
I just love playing like the nurse, you know, yeah. And also the
breathe, just breathe, do
yeah.
Lamaze.
And the partner trying to please, you know, what were you? The
mother,
the birthing mother, yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure if Gabrielle would have become the terrific warrior that she became if Xena hadn't gotten pregnant. But I do know that we were finding her pacifist ways narrow and confining in terms of story, and a little frustrating. I think it's frustrating to see two people who care about each other, one of them in the fight of their life and the other one kind of on the sidelines, not being able to do anything. I think that gets old and tedious. So Gabrielle would have evolved in a different direction. Whether she would have become the warrior she did, I guess that's anybody's guess.
Xena, I can think of no greater mother than you. It was you all along. You gave me this child.
We wanted to make a Callisto because we that was responsible for the pregnancy, because we thought that was the greatest challenge to Xena, and we never bothered to play. We thought that we would get mileage at a later date with the daughter of Callisto, but that beat never was, we never played it, and it never seemed important after that, so.
We would never say who the father was, remember? There was that big sort of, I'm not telling you.
But it was, she touched your belly or something, is that right?
It was like...
Didn't she? Eli was around her and she...
Callisto, yeah, that's right. Eli touched her, and Callisto was reincarnated as her body. And when I read that as her baby, when I read that the first time, I just laughed like a drain. That was the funniest thing I'd ever heard.
Laughed like a drain.
That's a Kevin Smith expression, actually.
Because I always thought it was going to be Ares. I thought Ares would be the father, so there you go.
It was such a cool idea, though.
Me, yeah.
The style of fighting that we use is very unique. Very few people come down and know sword play and know sort of Hong Kong action style, and certainly there was a lot of wire work, which is being suspended from a wire or several wires and doing that. So nobody is really, that we've ever had, sort of, it feels comfortable in a harness 25, 30 feet in the air. So you do have to do a lot of rehearsals and a lot of making sure that people sort of feel comfortable with what they're doing so they give a believable performance. So oftentimes you had to make sure that that your actors, especially your guest actors, were well versed in what they were doing, even though they may not know about it.
Going onto a set as a guest actor, I think, is one of the most intimidating things, because you don't know their way of doing things. You don't know any of the relationships and how they're established, and you're learning so many new things all at once that it can be a little overwhelming. But I've never had an experience as fantastic as the one on Xena. From the moment that I got there, I mean, granted, I had so much to do, I had so much to learn that I didn't even have time to worry about it. I just desperately had to try to keep up with what we were doing. I arrived something like 5:30 in the morning, and they picked me up at 7 to start wardrobe fittings and start learning all of the different fights that I would need to have for that particular episode. Just anything you could think of, I started instantly, and it was a marathon that first week. It was such a marathon. I'm a type A personality. I'm very detail oriented, and I over prepare everything. And
we're not looking for trouble. Too bad. You already found it. Get him! Woman!
It's a very nerve-wracking thing, because you just never know how people are going to react. Like you said, you're stepping into somebody else's family, and it's kind of a quick, fast process. Once you get there, it's sort of like, okay, let's go. They welcomed me with open arms. They could not have been nicer. And I'll always remember that, and it's something, hopefully, one day I'll be able to give back when there's that situation, return the favor. And I think it was the very first day on set. It was Ted, Renee, and Lucy, myself, and we're going over this little scene, and I mean, immediately they just start throwing dialogue left and right. I felt a little bit lost there, because I was like, where exactly are they at? Lucy looks over at me and she's like, sweetie, you're gonna have to get on the ball. We do a lot of improvising here. And it was like one of those things right away where I'm like, great. So, she's like, don't wreck my show.
Xena came into my life at this strangest moment. I had somewhat inexplicably gotten involved with a singing group, because I can dance and I can sing, and I have a best friend who has since become quite a pop star. But at the time, she was a little bit hesitant to do it on her own, and devised this idea that she wanted a group, which really, I think, for her was more of a personal choice of just not wanting to be alone. And we got along famously. We just put this thing together, and it was all clicking. And the week that we were supposed to sign a record contract was the same week that the Xena opportunity came my way. And they couldn't find someone for this part. They kept looking. The part was very top secret. I shouldn't say top secret, but just no one realized what the role was. It had simply been released as an Empress of Rome. It wasn't supposed to be recurring. It was certainly not known as Xena's daughter. So I thought it was a much smaller thing. And I went to the appointment, clicked instantly with the material, fortunately got called back, and met with Rob, and it just seemed so magical, and it all just kind of came together, and it suddenly became a very big deal, because I had no idea it was New Zealand. I had no idea that the episodes were so just mammoth. I mean, they're such huge experiences. It's more like shooting a movie each week. And with that, it took more time than we realized, and in the end, because it was going well and it was successful, I had to make a choice, and acting is my passion, hands down, so it was an easy choice. Yeah.
Was it originally Virgil? I don't think so. I think the character's name was Jarek. When I went in for the audition, I think it was Jarek, and he was just a warrior. I don't think that there was any specific relationship with Joxer in the auditioning sides. And once I got over there, they had rewritten the draft and they said that, you know, we're changing your character's name to Virgil. And I thought, Jarek sounds so tough. Virgil sounds so soft. What's up with that? And then they explained the whole entire thing, you know, Virgil the poet, and they were tying it in with, you know, being Ted's son. And then they were gonna, originally, I think, kind of have Renee and I, not as like a love interest kind of thing, but just, you know, have that common bond of poetry.
Yes. Oh, my first week on set was a doozy, but my first day was particularly amusing. We were running very late. The scenes with me were the very last scenes to be shot. There's like 400, well, that's probably a bit extreme, but there's so many extras. There's things on fire, there's smoke, and it's crazy. It's the most amazing set to be on. And I have to say, you know, I'm overwhelmed, but I'm just trying to focus on, you know, the little thing that I'm responsible for. And that's our very first take. We're racing the day. They only have time to do 2 or 3 takes at all. We get everything together, and we start to do this fight scene, and the fight scene included this very high kick, which, since it's my first day in the costume, we'd done this thing, I mean, dozens of times in rehearsal, but that was in, you know, just street clothes. We'd never done the fight fully in my regular warrior gear. So we go to do that. I do this high kick. The guy, you know, acts like he's been hit in the face, and he flies backwards, and I suddenly stop like a deer in headlights, just terrified. And of course, the director, Rick, is freaking out. Why are you stopping? We don't have time. What's going on? And I'm just like, I need a moment. I need to talk to one of the wardrobe girls. And yeah, that high kick had split this pair of pants entirely in 2. And no, I just obviously could not go on. But yeah, we fixed it. They took me into, you know, just one of the little huts, and, you know, just one of the, did this very fast sewing job. And fortunately, the next day I had brand new pants made out of a stretchy material. So that made it much better. But that was just the beginning of so many adventures. Yes, there was a moment in filming where everybody was like, do you smell that? What's that smell? And we found out that my hair extensions were being singed by some of the candles in another scene. I believe that was the second day of filming. And unfortunately, that's a scene that never made it onto the that particular episode, because we filmed far more than they actually could fit in. But it was another scene with Aries in my commander's tent. And, you know, candles everywhere, and whoops. So, you know, there's so many things that happened. But that made for a crazy first day, absolutely.
It's kind of a collaborative effort when you're on set. You know, you bounce things off of each other. Lucy's always just fun. She's always open for ideas, but, you know, she'll also take control of the situation. If she doesn't like something, she lets it be known that, you know, maybe that's not going to work, or no, or whatever. So that's always good, because as an actor, you try to bring in choices, but they're your own personal choices. You get to set, you're working with somebody else, and sometimes it can, bam. Renee, I think, she liked to run the line. She liked to rehearse it a lot more, and just kind of bounce it off of each other before we actually did a take. To whereas Lucy would sort of like go with the flow and let it kind of happen on camera. And then if it didn't work, we'd do a second take and try to adjust what, you know, went wrong.
Congratulations, Livia.
I've had tougher games of tag.
I wasn't talking about the battle. Oh, the battle's good. No, I was talking about you being named the Emperor's official successor.
Then our plans right on target.
We briefly thought about keeping Eve bad, but there was really, once she was bad, how many episodes you need to show she's really bad? What we really wanted to get to was, eventually we wanted to get to motherhood, which was the Xena, Gabrielle, and Eve in a battle against all the gods. And we knew, like halfway through the season, from like Seeds of Faith, which would be our 100th episode or so, where we were going with that.
Strangely enough, I think that the only thing that I ever wanted to do was act. But I really didn't start pursuing it until after high school. It was one of those things that, you know, everybody tells you it's very unrealistic, it can't happen, you know, you need more of a stable job. And after high school, I started going to community college, and I had this itch, and I could not get rid of it. So I knew that I had to at least try, even if it was locally. So I started local and started getting some, you know, little parts here and there, and it was exciting to me. And I was starting to learn, so I was grabbing every book that I could, and I was reading, and I was reading. And I finally, after a while, decided to make my move to New York City. If for no other reason, I could study, and then I was close enough back to Virginia, where I originally from, that I could go back home if it didn't work out. And I pretty much knew, though, when I got to New York, that I was going to spend my life pursuing this, no matter how tough it got, which, you know, there's some great times and some bad times. But overall, it has been very amazing. So spent 3 years in New York City, moved out to Los Angeles, and about 2.5 years after I got out here, I think it was in January of '97 or '98, I auditioned for a guest starring spot on this show, Xena. I had never seen it, didn't know much about it at the time, but I just went in for a one-episode thing. My agent's like, you know, plus it shoots over in New Zealand. I was like, wow, that could be a lot of fun. I went in, and it was Rob Tappert was there, and there were a bunch of people at the time that I didn't know who they were. Auditioned, it seemed to go really well. Rob was just a very laid-back guy, and he made the audition comfortable, which you don't always get that. He actually, you know, was speaking with me, to me, gave me some direction, and before I knew it, it was like I got that phone call going, okay, well, you got it. So I get over to New Zealand, and they just continue to ask me back and back and back, and I'm like, hey, this is great.
In a selfish way, I would love to have had Livia exist a bit longer. Such a fun character. Oh my God, did I love her so much. She was so fun to play, because no boundaries. You know, playing evil, playing a little crazy, you can do whatever you want, and it's okay. I loved the chance to be able, as an actor, to have two characters while being in the same body. They were entirely different. Livia and Eve could not have had more extremely different personalities, choices, to the point where sometimes it was hard for me to reconcile myself with Eve's choices after having established Livia so much in my own opinions and ideals of what the character was. But I knew what they were doing story-wise, and you know, you just trust the writers and the directors and everybody putting the show together, and you realize they know more than you do. You know, that your choices are, what I was thinking was purely just because I loved Livia so much. Yeah.
I want to talk about you. Me? You don't know the first thing about me. But I do. I know your first laugh, your first tears. I know your first breath. I'm your mother. You're my daughter. Your name is Eve.
When RJ wasn't involved and Alex and Bob came in for 8 episodes, they actually said, the first thing you got to do is get rid of that baby one way or the other. Play it, then leave her with somebody, do something. And they came up with the idea that I thought was really a good idea of saying, what we'll do is we'll freeze him for 25 years, come up, and then the mom can confront the daughter when the daughter's 26 and the mom's, in her young 30s, and have real, genuine, dramatic interaction. And I thought that was a great idea. And even though the guys were only there kind of at the steering wheel for a very brief time, that idea and some other things that they helped put in place really made, really told us where we were going to go for the rest of the season.
Alex and Bob had really wanted to, it seemed to me, wanted to reinvent the show a little bit more into, I think they wanted to take it even darker, if memory serves.
And to really mix it up.
And to really mix it up a bit. And you know, once again, change is always good in these kind of things. You can't do the same thing for 100 episodes, or your audience, I think, is gone. So I think the change of writing was a good thing. RJ was always there, sort of in the background, though, watching and supervising and things too. So it was never that he completely left the show and then came back later, for instance. I mean, we always had his stamp, I think, on the show.
For me personally, I thought there were some really fine episodes, and I thought by the end of the season, the show was really back on track. But the first 3 or 4, they were all right. They were what I call B episodes. None were particular. Well, actually, I love Fallen Angel, so what am I saying? And I love Chakram. And Animal Attraction was enjoyable in kind of a dumb Western sort of way. And but then the Chinese ones derailed, and then it was just train wrecks with little gems in the middle of them. I really liked Seeds of Faith and God-Fearing Child. And then when we got to Anthony and Cleopatra, I actually thought the show was back as to what it is, which with kindred spirits and lifeblood and my personal travesty of fish sticks. So it really had no guiding factor until the horse was out of the barn, and then just solid work got it back on track.